Welcome to the Jones Zone, a podcast by Darryl and JJ Jones.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Jones Zone. Today, my guest is Lonnie Shaw. Lonnie is a pool. Tell us what you are, Lonnie.
My company is Tri-Cities Pools, Inc. We have a corporation, and then we've been in business as Tri-Cities Pool Service and Repair for back when I knew your mom, 1980s.
In fact, if I remember correctly, did you buy, your current house was a listing that I had. I think it was my good friend Chris's mother and father-in-law's house in Brea on Roundtree.
Oh, Chris Cimetiero.
Yeah.
Out of Brea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we saw Chris's, it was Chris's wife's house.
Right.
And when we moved into it, funny story, went into the attic and we saw Chris's wife's pom-pom. She was a cheer girl. And so her cheer stand was still in the attic. And so I took it out, brought it over to the city of Brea where he was, and he, laughed about it and gave it back to her.
Wow, that's awesome. My show is about anything and everything that has to do with real estate, obviously pools being a big part of a lot of homes. I thought Lonnie, and I've known him forever, and I know he knows his stuff. I would have him on to talk about the pool business. How is business, by the way?
So business is good. There are some guys that aren't quite as busy, but I think we had a little bit of a slump a while ago, but boy, I think we enjoyed it. The guys took about a week off, and then we went right back to work.
I know. He just before we started, he nudged me and said, "Hey, I got to work, man. I got a job. This is, let's get going here. Let's get this thing over."
Yes, as we speak, I have 2 crews out and a trailer and a truck full of material.
Okay, let's get into it. So now, do you do remodels or only installs? Does that make sense?
So I would say 50% of our business is new pools. 40% of it is we do pools for Swan Pools and Pacific Paradise Pools. We work for Mission Pools, Fluid Dynamics. We do a lot of their work, and sometimes we'll do their pool. They'll sell the pool, and then they'll call us and say, here, we have a contract, and here you go. What part of this would you like to do? And we'll often do maybe just the masonry and the tile and the walls and the concrete, or sometimes we'll do the rebar and reform some of the steps, reform some of the shelves, Baja shelves, Shamu shelf, what you would call it. Right. And it depends on it. But my license is everything. We can do everything in a pool.
I had no idea. So you have so those would be considered other pool companies that hire you.
Correct.
Oh, interesting. And then you have you're your own
Correct. My white trucks have no names on them. So when we pull up, my guys know that we're representing Swan Pools, or we're representing Fluid Dynamic Pools, or Mission Pools, or yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then sometimes they'll say, is this your pool? And I'll say yes. Then they get a big sigh of relief because they know my pools, the customers are usually generally nicer. We've usually worked for these people before. They have friends of ours that we've already worked for. And then I would say 10% of our business is probably just plaster and tile. Very small amount of just plaster and tile, which is probably maybe a $20,000 job, when generally we're doing a remodel somewhere in the range of $90,000 to $110,000. And I would say a brand new pool is somewhere in $170,000 to $220,000.
Wow. So they've increased a tad in the last 10 years. I think it's
as milk, bread, and eggs.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Is there a most popular style that's currently trending? A kidney bean or a lap pool, or I don't know. Tell us more what you're seeing out there.
So for a while, we were doing a Palm Springs retro pool, and people would see it and they're like, can you do this in my backyard? So very Palm Springs, very palm trees, rocks, succulents, and very simple tile, single level pool.
White plaster.
Yes, and they went perfect in the backyards that they were designing. And then sometimes we would design the whole barbecue area, and it would be right out of the 50s.
So you do more than just pools. You're going to do almost like landscape design. No, or
a little, but
okay.
I would leave the landscape designing to a landscape designer, and he can tell us what to do.
Got it. That makes sense. I'm sure it'll vary dramatically between jobs, but is there an average time process that it takes from, okay, I call you, Lonnie, could you come over? I'd like to get an estimate. Okay, yeah, I want you to have you install. I give you the okay today. How long does a typical pool take?
It usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks to get a design. I get the phone call and they're like, yes, you did a pool for our friend and our other friend and our other friend. We want you to do our pool. And so I say, then you need to see pools. So I show them a couple of pools that we've done in my life of almost 40 years of pools, probably 4,000 pools. We have thrown files and files away from pools we've done so many years ago. I say, you need to see what we do. So they look at some pools and then they draw on a piece of paper what they want, or they tell me what they want. And then I have a company, or I subscribe to a company that belongs to Pool Studios, and I pay for that access to their 3D software. So I design a 3D software pool for them. I take it to their house. They look at it. They get a plan. They like it. We make changes. I make the changes on the software. That's about 2 or 3 weeks right there. After they say, yes, I want to do it, then I submit my plans to engineering. Engineering takes them. It might take a couple of days. Then I submit them to the city. Any city can take from over the counter to 2 weeks. And then after that, then we start digging. And we don't dig until we get permits from the city. From the time we dig the pool, the first time my guys show up to the time they're swimming, it's about 2 months. Okay. My fastest pool is the one we did just down the street. It was 21 days. Wow. So if you have a pool in construction and it's taking months and months, then it's either a $400,000 job or you need to get control of that.
Yeah, something's doing something wrong. So what about surfaces of pools? I know that's, we talked about the Palm Springs style. I said, was that just white plaster? And I've noticed, for example, Pebble Tech had come on years ago, decades ago. But I do remember that used to be not a very good, it seemed like it failed a lot and it would chip away. Have they made improvements on the Pebble Tech, number one? And what types of different pool surfaces are there?
In pool surfaces, in plaster, there is white plaster, there is colored plaster, which I wouldn't recommend because it's modelly. And as I describe plaster, they say I would like gray, and I describe it. So do you want gray model, gray blotchy, gray marbly? And they're like, no, I just want gray. And I'm like, you don't get just gray. If you put a color in a plaster and a concrete, it's going to discolor a little bit. And that look is good. A lot of people like that look. If you do a Pebble Tech is a name brand, kind of like Jacuzzi is a spa brand. If you do a Pebble bottom, there are mini, micro, and regular. There's probably 3 sizes of Pebble you can use. Millions of colors. Because plasters can custom color their colors whatever they want. Alan Smith does his own colors, which are standard. There's other plasters that do nothing but just plaster and tile, and they can do their own plaster and tile.
Now, on that note, is it true? In fact, oddly enough, I think it was Chris Matera. The pool color, why is that important? So, for example, I was told once that with a darker bottom, you don't have to use a heater as much because it absorbs the heat from the sun. Any truth to that?
That is true.
Okay.
If I'm designing a pool and there are kids involved, I generally don't do Pebble. I will try to get them to do a white plaster because the white plaster is smoother, and that's just my personal preference. But the look, a lot of people like the Pebble look, and they can change the Pebble look, and that's different also. Older folks that are not swimming in it as much, I would say do Pebble, make it look beautiful. But if there are a lot of little kids, I'm poured in place coping, sandblasted deck, and white plaster until those kids grow up and the girls aren't wearing their bathing suits down on the side of the deck, and all that kind of stuff because the pebbles are so rough.
It's more durable. My wife mentioned that. Are people using even stone? She mentioned quartz she saw somewhere. I'm not sure if she meant tile or...
So quartz is a product that plaster is made of.
Oh.
And then we use white cement to bond it together. So quartz has always been that way. And that would be a white quartz pool, generally white. Generally less expensive, but white. 3M years and years ago used to try to stain quartz, and we used it for a while, and it didn't quite hold. So I don't even know if 3M even makes it anymore.
Lonnie, let's talk about a little bit more about servicing the pool. Tell us a little bit more. I heard the phrases of acid wash to emptying your pool. Is there a recommended number of times you want to do that? Expand on that.
So in servicing a pool, I would recommend if you're buying a brand new pool and you've just spent your $100,000, $200,000 on a pool, call a local pool professional. Generally, I would get the guy that's down the street because he's already in your neighborhood and it's easy for him just to do one more pool. I would say probably the price of service these days would be between, you might be $125 to $200 in that range is where we're at now. We're just raising, and chlorine has gone up 3 times for the service guy.
Wow.
So we are now getting a little bit pinched. The service guys were all going, man, the cost is so high to maintain a pool. And even when you go to Home Depot or Leslie's or somewhere to get your own chlorine to take care of it yourself, you're going, wow, that's almost, not quite double, but it's a lot of money.
And then what about acid wash? I don't know. I heard that phrase. I get asked that. Acid wash. What the heck is acid wash?
I would say, Darryl, you get the question more than we do because someone is wanting to make their pool look crisp and white and clean and get ready to sell it.
Yeah.
So their last ditch effort from spending the $20,000 would be spend the $3,000 or $4,000, drain the pool, acid wash it white, and then put it on the market. But that doesn't generally happen twice in a whole life of a pool of 30 years.
And now another problem, in fact, I know a client had a problem with moss. It was just, for some reason, their pool just gathered a lot of moss. Now, it was hotter. And does that just have to do with how it is in terms of getting the sunlight and also the lack of certain chemicals? Talk about that.
So right now, we're just getting done with all of our rains and all of the material and bacteria and dirt that has been on our deck and in our backyard, and we have dogs and all that stuff washes into our swimming pool, and the algae loves all that organic material. And it says it's feast time, and it eats and feasts and does what algae does, and it grows and grows and grows. And it's a service problem every year that we deal with. And if it gets too bad, we will drain the pool because your total dissolved solids are too high or whatever your pool professional will say. And then we'll start with clean water.
What types of pools are there? There's salt water, there's chlorine, there's ponds. I'm kidding. What types of pools are there?
So there are different ways to sanitize a pool. And chlorine is generally the most common. It is the approved for the state to use. They have ozone. They have salt, which is still chlorine. The only difference is that you have the salt in your pool. It goes through some sensors and it turns from salt to chlorine. And then when the chlorine comes out, it eats up an organic material and it turns back into salt. And then that's the cycle of the salt and the chlorine.
Interesting. So saltwater pools have chlorine.
Yes.
Okay.
They continually make a little amount of chlorine to keep the pool clean. Salt is good in the pool because it helps with when you're swimming in the pool, the pH is higher, and there's a little bit of salinity in the water, and it makes your eyes less irritated by swimming in it.
With the salt water.
Your skin feels a little bit better also.
How hard is it to switch a chlorine pool to saltwater and vice versa?
It can be very hard, and it can be impossible sometimes. If you have copper plumbing underneath your pool and you cannot use salt, it will corrode the copper right away. If you have an old heater and it's not a copper nickel heater, it will eventually corrode the copper and the bronze in the heater also. So our heaters today, we have heaters that are built for salt pools. And our material that we use for plumbing is all PVC now.
Okay, so if you do it, you'd like to wait until the pool is in need of a new repair or whatever.
Generally, a newer pool can do a salt pool. An older pool cannot.
Okay. How about getting rid of a pool? I know you're a pool installer. This is probably the last thing you want to talk about, but there are some people that need to get rid of a pool. Do you do that, by the way?
We have gotten rid of pools, and because a family has grown up and you have a retired person there, he doesn't want to take care of the pool anymore. He doesn't use the pool, doesn't want to sell the house, and wants to redo the pool. And generally, it's around I would say $15,000, $20,000 generally to get rid of a pool. And you do need to get a permit. You do need to do some things for it. There are 3 inspections to getting rid of a pool. When we have taken pools out, we have taken them out completely. The city does not require that you take them out completely. They require that you break the bond beam in the side of the pools down 2 feet and then put a hole in the bottom of it. But when we've taken them out, we've taken them all the way out.
Oh, so because I thought that there's the burying the pool. So what you're saying is that this is different from burying a pool. Am I making sense at all?
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Burying a pool is what people do, and they just take the sides off. It becomes a problem when you sell the house and the people in the back go, this would be a great place for a pool. And then they start digging a pool and they find that there's another pool underneath the house. So the plans and the permits are supposed to tell the new homeowner that that's there, but they don't usually know that until they submit the plans and the city says, hey, there's already a pool back there.
What's affected the pool industry? Anything right now?
One of the biggest things that has affected the pool industry is the electricity and the requirements that our legislators tell us. We have to have variable speed pumps and they have to flow so much water, use so much electricity. And so what has happened, we cannot repair pool motors anymore in California. We have to replace them with a brand new motor.
This is another thing, oddly enough, I know people personally would like to change the shape of their pool. They have a kidney bean shape, let's say, and they want to make it a straight rectangular pool.
So we've changed shapes of pools, and a lot of times we've added spas to pools, and that's easily done. We've added spas to pools. They're probably around $70,000 to add a spa to an existing pool. Generally, if you have a big shallow area, it's a little less because we can use 2 walls of the pool and add it inside. But generally, we can change the shape.
And so you can make a kidney bean shaped pool, and you want to make it rectangle shape.
Generally, people don't make that kind of an extreme thing. If they want a rectangular pool and they have a 60s kidney bean shape, Anthony Pool style pool, they were famous for that.
Sure.
They generally will either take the pool out or will say, do you really just want it 3 feet longer? Why don't we add a spa to it, or why don't we do something else? Because if we do that, you might as well just take the whole pool out and rebuild the pool you want in your backyard.
So it is a little bit cost prohibitive changing the shape. It can be.
You can save some money if you're not changing the whole pool.
What's the most popular shape? Is there a popular shape?
So because we have, I call them stamp size lots, 100 by 60 lots. The most popular shaped pools are rectangular pools with a large Baja shelf and a spa either raised in the back in the center, raised in the shallow area on the far side so that water spills over and you can see the water spilling over.
What would be the pros and cons of the shape of the pool? So, for example, I was told once a rectangular is nice because you can fit a nice cover on there a lot more easily.
So that would be a small concession.
Okay. Okay. So no.
the shape of the pool mostly goes by how much they want to use it and how big a lot they have. So rectangle fits the squares of our lots generally. The spa can go in one place or another. A Baja shelf can go in one side or the other, opposite the deep end. But that's really pretty popular. We haven't done freeform in a while because we're not doing the rocks that we used to do in the 80s and in the 90s, the big rock pools when the water falls. So we're not doing so many of those, but we are changing some of those Anthony kidney-sized pools into rock waterfall pools.
Infinity pools, are those pretty popular nowadays? Of course, you have to have a certain topography, I suppose, or something, right?
They're only popular if you're overlooking the beach or you have a pool on the hill. Generally not a general. In the city of Brea, I don't believe we have any infinity edge pools. I've looked in all the neighborhoods. We might have 1 or 2 in the hills. So we have done Olympic style pools where we have a perimeter overflow. So when you're swimming down the pool, all you see is water and a little slit on both sides. And as you swim down, the wake goes into those overflows and gone so that by the time you get to the end of the pool, there's no wake behind it. There's no ripples and waves.
Oh, interesting.
So we've done pools for Olympic swimmers, and they're retired Olympics. They've swam their whole lives in Olympics and stuff, and they wanted an Olympic-sized pool in their backyard, but a real Olympic-sized pool.
What's the length of those?
We did theirs exactly 60 feet long, and I don't know if that was a third of an Olympic or a half of an Olympic. I don't remember, but we put lanes in the middle of it. It measured exactly from end to end so that if she was ever doing anything, it was accurate racing, accurate time turning, and all that kind of stuff.
What are the newest innovations in the pool industry that you could speak to?
We briefly talked about chlorine. They have ozone, chlorination. Phones are now controlling our pools. I can turn on my phone, I can turn on a dozen people's pools because I still have control of their pools. And they call me and they say something's not working. And I can look on my phone and say, what's it doing now? And they're like, oh, it's working now. And I'm like, okay.
Now, what about slides and diving boards? It seems like we're just getting fewer and fewer. Are those still legal? Can we still do slides and diving boards in pools, and people are people?
Yes, we just installed a slide in our last pool in Fullerton, and it was the Hurricane or something. It was a spin around slide and slid in. And we just did a diving board maybe 2 years ago in Yorba Linda, an actual 1 meter diving board.
Is there any advice on, you said you recommended a little deeper pool due to the diving board. Let's say if they weren't having a diving board. Because, for example, I have a very deep pool, and one complaint I guess I could say I would have, it takes so much longer to heat up and all that. Is this making sense at all?
Yes. So when I'm designing a pool with somebody, I'm asking those questions. Who's going to use the pool? And 6 feet deep seems to cover everything. If they have high school kids or junior high kids that are starting to get in and they have a platform where we have rocks, then they're like, well, how am I going to keep those kids from climbing the rocks and jumping in the pool? And the answer is you're not. So let's build the pool deep enough so they can do that. And so we put the ledges out so that if they even jump off the side, they may not hit the coping. They may still get to the pool. Now, horseplay and all that stuff goes on with junior hires, but you can't bubble wrap kids.
Yeah.
You have to take the risk.
Any recommendations to extend the life of a pool?
So the Anthony pools back in the olden days, 60s, 70s, and 80s, 60s and 70s, the plaster was a lot different. I believe that California, or I don't know what the industry is, but they have taken some of the things out of cement that make cement, and it's not quite as hard as it used to be, or it'll still pass a PSI test, but it doesn't seem to have the longevity in plaster that we used to have years ago.
How often would you recommend anybody maintaining their pool? For example, should it be an annual thing? You have a pool person come out and just review everything, or just wait till something goes wrong? What is your suggestion?
So if you're using your pool in the summertime, generally people have a pool guy that comes out once a week. And I think we mentioned $150 to $200. He'll come out. He'll charge you that once a month. He'll come out maybe 52 times a year every week, or maybe 48 times a year. Probably 4 times a year your pool will get skipped because of rain, mechanical problems, weather, a vacation. So I would recommend having a pool guy, someone you like, someone that you let in their backyard.
What would you say would possibly be the biggest mistake people make with their pools, whether it's the designing the pool or the upkeep of the pool? Is there something that stands out?
I think the biggest mistake people do with their swimming pools when they buy a pool is they try to service it themselves. I think that's their biggest mistake.
Like most things, you get a professional.
I would get a professional.
What are people doing now to safeguard their pool?
So some of the safety things that have come out by the state and legislators have been, and it's been a while, and it's common knowledge to all of us, is that some pool lights don't have GFI switches on them. So commercial pools, sometimes in other states, or old hotel pools, you get closer to the light and you feel the little bit of buzzing or the little bit of, you feel something going on.
Yikes.
So we... lately, or not lately, but it's been a while, we have GFI. Now we're using low voltage lights for lights, and they're not even There's not even electricity going to it. The main drains that suck the water into the pool, into the pump, there in the past has been a problem with kids, girls, people getting sucked against that, and it was hard for them to release themselves. So we have anti-vacuum heads on our main drains and stuff, and they're even plumbed. You can't have one that just comes out and sucks directly into the pump. It has to have a matching one somewhere else within, outside of 3 feet, so that the same person can't be getting held underneath the water.
My wife mentioned something about a motion detector that will alert someone if the pool gets awake in it or something like that. Am I making any sense at all? Is that
so? As California keeps trying to be safe, and as we keep trying to save lives, we are trying to do it the most common and the most realistic way we can. And so instead of having 2 locked gates or 3 locked gates or a 10-foot wall around our pool, we use motion sensors. So you'll have 7 ways to isolate your pool from a toddler. And all these laws are made to protect toddlers, not junior hires and not adults or not anybody like that, but toddlers. So fences have to close towards the pool. So if a toddler pushes on a fence, it does not open. It pushes closed and latches. The latches are 54 inches high. You have to have a barrier around the property 5 feet or 6 feet high, and I think there's a state minimum requirement. And then you have to have 2 more safety features. We use a floating sensor, one in the spa and one in the pool. And so when it sits there, if someone does happen to get through a gate, Santa Ana winds blow and one of the gates blows open, the pool guy comes, you have a very smart dog and he gets out the gate and it doesn't close. If someone gets into that pool, the alarm will go off. And if you hear an alarm go off, go look in the pool. Don't look and say, I don't see anything, because what you're going to see is nothing. And if a toddler's in the water, you won't see him. He'll be in the bottom of the pool. So if you ever hear an alarm go off, go look in the pool. It's the first place when you have a pool, and most people that have pools, if they're missing somebody, they don't run around the house looking. Their first spot is, I go to the pool first.
You explained that happened to me, and that's the first thing I did.
It's the first thing you look, and if they're not in the pool, then you make your way in through the house looking for your kids, or they're playing hide and seek, or,
So what about the depth of a pool? I know plenty of people who, you mentioned you have kids, and then the evolution of a pool, the kids move out, and let's say that now there's grown-ups there, so they don't want the 11-foot pool any longer. In fact, frankly, they like to be able to touch the bottom and have people come over to play volleyball, let's say. How hard is it have you had a lot of calls for changing the depth, let's say from 11 foot to 5 feet or whatever?
Yes, the answer is yes. So the middle of the pool is generally the deepest part now. And then we're making the deep part maybe 4.5 feet so that you can stand. It needs to be higher so that your chest is in the water. Women and guys, we don't want to be, waist and our belly sticking out or, whatever. We want to be covered with water. And I think women and men both are more comfortable with water up to their chest, a little higher than their chest. And that's enough to roam around, hold a drink, hold something that's floating, and talk with someone without water coming up to your chin and having to have to be a problem.
So that's common. That's not uncommon.
It's a common thing. And so when we're doing a pool, we will measure the wife's height, and we'll measure just, around her armpit, around her elbows, and we'll get in that range that we want to get in so that she's comfortable being in the pool.
What about pool leaks? I sold a house recently, I had the pool leak. Is that a common occurrence?
So generally the shells don't leak. Generally and if they do, we've had movement and earthquakes, and that's kind of California, welcome to California.
Right.
We design them to not leak, but sometimes they get a little cracked, the water gets in them, and the homeowner never takes care of it. And then eventually the steel starts to get weak, and the steel gives out, and then it starts to move and crack and leak a little bit of water. And they're easy to fix.
Okay.
It's not the death of a pool.
Well, I tell you, I think we're almost done here. I was going to ask you, do you have any certain brands of pool equipment that you prefer, or you suggest that someone use, or no? Or...
So there are three major pool brands. Jandy, which is, I think, the best, not the most used. Pentair has great sales force. They've gone out and gotten everybody to use Pentair pumps. And Hayward has now been a big purchaser of all the small little companies. And so those are, any three of those would probably be fine. I prefer Jandy because of their automation is a little more homeowner friendly and easier to connect. A homeowner has better luck with it.
Well, Lonnie, this has been phenomenal. I mean, I think that you have brought a lot of valuable information for people that have questions about pools. Lonnie, I tell you, if anybody wants to contact you to have you install their pool, what would be the best way for them to even get a hold of you?
They could call me 714-293-9799.
Awesome.
And I pick up the phone myself. If it's in Brea, especially, I'll pick it up.
Right.
If it's coming from Tucson, Arizona, or somewhere, I won't pick it up because just a phone call. But I've enjoyed doing this. It's been fun, and I hope that people have learned something, or I brought some value to being here. We've been doing this for almost 40 years. So, and I do have a friend, Dave Penton, who is with Fluid Dynamics, and we do work for him, and he's a big pod person. Mm-hmm. It's not my thing, but he's 15 years younger than I am, kind of like you. So you guys are more into this stuff than I am. I'm just the boots on the ground and the guy digging the holes and foraging new ground. So
thank you again, and everybody. Hey, please click on the subscribe button if you could, and share this with your friends and family. And again, thank you for watching, and take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Awesome.